In this episode, you'll discover how to hit the head race start line at the optimal boat speed.
Feel the grip of the oar handle, smooth yet firm in your hands. Taste the salt of your own sweat and the occasional splash of water. It's all part of the journey. Welcome to another episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Each week, our host, Masters rowing coach Rebecca Caro, dives deep into the world of Masters rowing. Whether you're on the water or in the gym, join us to become a faster master. Let's go rowing.
Hello, everybody. It's good to be back. And today our topic is racing starts for head races. It's coming into the long distance racing season all around the world, and practicing your racing start is an essential component to feeling confident at the start of the race. If you've done a good start, you then feel that you're in the zone doing the process and that you begin the race well. So, what are the things that we can do to ensure that you get a good start? Now, the goal of your racing start is a rolling start, often called a flying start, which means that you aren't beginning from stationary. Your boat is already moving, and you then need to get the boat up to race speed, timing this so that you are at least close to race pace when you go over the line. So this requires a certain amount of judgment. You've got to be able to look over your shoulder, see how far away you are from, firstly, the boat in front, secondly, the start line, and judge when to start your stroke sequence. Now, the precise details of the stroke sequence matter a little less in head races, in my opinion, compared with side-by-side races. Now, the person that I know who did the best head racing starts was called Guy Pooley. He still races in the UK. He's a really skilled single sculler. And he knew exactly how far his boat traveled each stroke. He knew exactly what strokes he needed to do so that he didn't waste any energy doing a start before the timing mark at the start of the actual race. And I think that was a very, very canny move on his part. Learning how quickly your boat, particularly if it's a crew boat, not just you in a single, learning how quickly your boat gets up to race speed is something you need to learn. And you will learn that by practicing your racing start sequence regularly. Try and do it as part of your warm-up each time you go out to practice. Now, my view on the stroke sequence is because the boat is already moving, the chances are that you will have rowed off at about half pressure as you approach the start line. As you get closer, you firm up the pressure first. Keep the rate controlled, maybe in the low 20s. And then when you are about 5 strokes away from the timing point, for me, that's the ideal time to start your racing start stroke sequence. I like to start it with 3 3/4 length strokes. Why? Well, it allows you to do a short, kind of punchy stroke. 3/4 long means that you're not at full slide, but you really can get your legs on and do a really strong leg drive through all of the strokes. After those 3 3/4, you can then lengthen out to full slide. You can do that in one stroke so that you get a little bit more slide length. Keep that punchy leg drive going. And then I like to crank the rate up. Personally, I find it easier to get the rate up without a lot of backswing. So feeling like you're rowing sitting kind of vertical. And then after maybe 5 strokes, you've then got the rate well above your ideal mid-race rate. So for the sake of argument, let's say 30 is your goal for your mid-race rate. You want to be cranking the rate between 2 and 6 points higher than your target race rate. Why do we do this? Because it's really important that when we step down to race pace has a real contrast to what we've already been doing in the start sequence, and it feels manageable. It feels easy to achieve. It's not a really, really challenging rate at this early stage in the race. Stepping down in and of itself is a skill to be practiced. When you step down to race pace, you need to create a little more rhythm in your stroke. You need to take the rate down somewhat, and you need to have long accelerated strokes. They're going to be leg driven, but you've also got a bit more backswing than you had in those early strokes at the beginning of the start sequence. And your stroke should feel elastic. It should feel kind of springy. You put the blades in the water and you spring away from the catch, and you can hold on to the finish so that it's quite long in the water. Now, I generally find that if you move towards that kind of stroke, your stroke rate naturally will drop maybe 2 points. You don't need to do anything particularly different except to aim for that elastic stroke feeling. So you don't need to hold back in any way in terms of your slide on the recovery or your time around the finish. Just aim to get this really elastic long stroke. I like to do that initial step down and then hold that for at least 40 seconds, sometimes a minute, during which you allow the rate to come down a little bit more, but it's not a definite step, as in on this next stroke, we are all going to drop the rate 2 points or 3 points. What I like is to use method of making a rhythm as the way of ensuring that you get the step down. And then from that, as you get into the first, second minute of the race, I generally find that the rate quietly drifts downwards towards the race rate that I know I can sustain through to the finish. I suggested that it was 30. You know, it might be 20 in your single in a headwind. It might be 32, 33 in an 8. It depends how old you are. It depends how skilled you are. So don't be bound by the numbers. How to make a rhythm. Rhythm comes as a contrast between the power phase and the recovery phase. That is how rhythm in a rowing boat is achieved. I believe that you can make your rhythm during the power phase from half slide to the finish. So you put the blade in at the catch, and then from half slide to the finish, you want a very confident swing and draw. So swinging your back and drawing your arms off your back so that the two are quite blended. And then that adds a little bit more boat speed in that second half of the power phase. Now, the rhythm comes by making the contrast as you move on to the recovery. So you take your blades out of the water and then sit very still and separate your arms from your body on the recovery. Make sure that you get your arms fully straight. If you're in sweep, it's your outside arm that needs to go fully straight, while your shoulders are still leaning back towards the bow. So you separate the arm straightening and then the body rock forwards, the pivot, as it's often called. So by making this separation of the arms from the body, you allow the boat to run on using that extra power that you created in the power phase and allowing your body sequencing to be very definite. Arms followed by body, then release the knees and roll up the slide. So that separation helps first to bring the rate down a point or two, but you then on the next stroke make a rhythm again, a very strong second half of your power phase reinforce the separation of the arms from the body. You still should have your handle coming in towards your body at a good speed in the power phase, and your handle goes away, in my view, at the same speed that it came in as you move on to the recovery phase. You don't want to stop the handle, particularly not at the finish and not at race pace. So keep the proportion of the handle coming in and the handle coming away the same. So if the handle comes in at a rate of 32, it moves away at the speed of a rate of 32. If it comes in at 28, it moves away at 28. Make your rhythm over 3 strokes so that it's very strong. That really helps to establish the race rate that you want then to achieve through the rest of the middle of your race. And this rhythm is really important because it marks the transition from closing off your start sequence and moving on to your mid-race pace. The only other thing that I would add in terms of the racing start is, as you're approaching the line, don't rush those first 3 strokes. Your boat isn't going particularly fast, and you can be extremely powerful through the water at a lower rate than you can at a higher rate. And your goal in the first 5-6 strokes is to get your boat up to race speed. So the hull needs to accelerate through the water. It needs to get faster and faster. Since you're already paddling, it's a flying start, a rolling start, you already have some speed on the hull. And although your stroke coach won't show your actual speed immediately because they all average over 3 strokes, you can be sure that over 5 or 6 strokes, you will get your boat hull up to race pace very efficiently, but you must have that leg power. And so a strong first stroke, don't rush onto the second stroke. Separate your arms from your body. Go up the recovery. A stronger second stroke. Now, because the boat will be moving faster on the second stroke because you've already put a little bit more speed into the hull, your second stroke will be at a higher stroke rate than your first. And so you will continue to accelerate the hull. As you come off the second stroke, your handle speed will be a little faster again because your rate will have increased because the hull has increased its speed. And your third stroke, you may then have gone from maybe a rate of 22 at the first stroke. You may then be already at rate 26, 27 by the time you're taking that third stroke. And of course, after the third stroke, we're moving into then cranking the rate up. So you're already in the high 20s of stroke rate, and then you can crank it into the 30s. But take care not to rush those first 3 strokes. And when you're practicing in your training, try to hold the rate down in those first 3 strokes and see what happens as a consequence when you get on to strokes 4, 5, 6, and 7. When you've held the rate down, what happens to hull speed? What happens to the split as you move into your higher cranking the rate piece, compared with if you rush or a little bit faster on the rate on the first 3. And you should see a noticeable difference in how the boat speed lifts and how it glides and what happens to the split. If you check the split when you get to about stroke 5, that should be reflective of how fast the boat was going, probably at the third stroke of your racing start, so your third 3/4 stroke, and that will give you some good clues. If you change your speed coach to measuring meters per second rather than split, yes, it still averages, but in my view, it's a little more sensitive measure and it changes quicker. So you might want to do that in your practices so that you can see the effect that your start sequence is having on the hull speed. Have a good one. And I think that racing start won't win you head races. They won't really lose you head races, but have the confidence to hold on to your start perhaps for a little longer than you might think. Don't step down to your race pace immediately after you finish the start. As I said earlier, do a step down, maybe only 2 points, and then maintain that speed for a good 40 seconds to a minute and allow the rate to drift down to your mid-race stroke rate. See how that works for you, because I think you can gain just a bit more advantage than you think, and you will not exhaust yourself. A lot of people are cautious of a long race and don't work hard enough at the start. And as a consequence, they leave boat speed on the table, which they could have had slightly earlier in the race. And I think that's an opportunity for people who are confident doing their racing start to get more speed for the distance and the effort earlier in the race than other crews might have. Have a good one.
We are part of the Rowing Chat Podcast Network. Please tell your fellow rowers about the show. If you've learned just one helpful thing from today's episode, please consider supporting the show for as little as $1 per month by visiting fastermastersrowing.com/podcast.